is up, Cowboy Nation? Dallas fan 1997 here, guys. Hope you all are having a good day. You know, I'm just hanging out. I know you can't see me right now. I wanted to talk about free agency a little bit, the Cowboys, draft talk, all that sort of stuff. I'll be honest, I don't expect the Dallas Cowboys to do a whole lot in free agency. You know, I know that they've talked about restructuring Dak and restructuring CeeDee Lamb and Tyler Smith to open up cap space, and yeah, that may open up $100 million, and we may be able to get some players. But when you factor in all the needs the Dallas Cowboys have on the team, I just don't think it's going to be enough. Because you got to think they're still going to have some money on the cap left over after paying all these guys to roll into next year. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm not like crazy about it, if I'm being completely honest with you. But, you know, with the restructures, because all that's doing is, you know, as Big Country says, you're kicking the can down the road, and that's exactly what it is. Because people act like restructuring is this great thing. It's not. All you're doing by restructuring is you're going to push the money down the road, and you're going to have to pay it later. That's all you're doing. But the Cowboys don't have a choice in doing that because they're so top-heavy when it comes to their roster that they just don't have a choice. You know, so that's kind of where we're at. And yeah, it's hard to build a good football team when you're paying 5 or 6 players the majority of the cap. So that's where we're at, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. Now, we've heard a bunch of rumors about Nakobe Dean, Max Crosby, you know, Brandon Aubrey being the highest paid kicker, him wanting $10 million. You know, George Pickens, of course, is franchise tagged as I expected. It is non-exclusive, though, so if the Cowboys, you know, decide to trade George Pickens and allow him to negotiate with other teams, great. We can get some draft picks out of it. But I was on the fence for a while about paying George Pickens because I do like George Pickens. I think he's a good receiver, but looking at this team and taking a deeper dive at where we're at, man, it does not make sense if you want to build a football team that's competitive to go out there and pay George Pickens, man. It just doesn't. It really doesn't, fan nation. I like George Pickens. I think he's a great receiver, but it just financially it doesn't make sense with where the Cowboys are at on the cap. And then everybody wants us to go out there and pay Brandon Aubrey, and I think Brandon Aubrey is an elite kicker. I've been a Brandon Aubrey fan since he first came into the league, back when people were saying, oh, we don't have a kicker we can trust. I saw Aubrey in preseason. I'm like, this guy's pretty good, man. As long as his accuracy is decent, he's got a big enough leg, and I believed in him back then when a lot of people didn't. So, you know, I like Brandon Aubrey, but even $10 million is too much for a kicker. But, you know, shout out to JB the Cowboy fan. He was calling out the hypocrisy of some people when they were saying that Brandon Aubrey, you know, they were saying, oh, let's just trade him, like he's so replaceable, but they didn't do the same for Dak, and I agree with that. There's a lot of fans that have done that over the years. So, you know, it is what it is. I do think Brandon Aubrey's an elite kicker, though. I will say that. But I know $10 million is a lot for a kicker, so I don't know about that. And Brandon Aubrey, man, is a great kicker, but that's a lot of money. $10 million is a lot of money for a kicker. So that's my thoughts on it. But you look at the Cowboys roster, fan nation, we're in real trouble defensively. And I mean that. You know, as of right now, you know, at edge, the Cowboys don't have an edge. Their best edge is James Houston. He's their only, like, legit starting edge. And that's all they got. Because you look at what happened with Donovan Zaraku. He had that labrum surgery. He's not supposed to be back until training camp. Well, if he's not ready by then, your starters going into 2026 as of right now is James Houston and Isaiah Land. And that's all you got. And then they just barely switched Maris Leofold to outside linebacker, which I think is probably the right choice considering his best attribute is, you know, rushing the passer, getting after the quarterback. I do think that is the best position for him, so I give Parker some credit for that. And they also, the Cowboys don't have a lot of money to work with, so they got to do something, you know. But we don't, the only edge we got that's a legit starter to me is James Houston and Donovan Ezaraku, but Ezaraku is hurt. So right now, Isaiah Land, who's a practice squad candidate, and James Houston are your edges going into 2026. So the Cowboys need an edge. They need an outside linebacker, a pass rusher. That's what they need. Because they got their 3 defensive tackles, they're set. They got Clark as the nose, they got Osa, and they got Quinnen Williams as your other 2 inside defensive ends. Your smaller defensive tackles, because they're running the 3-4. But now, Ezraku's hurt, so you got Houston at outside linebacker and Maris Leofau. Oh, I guess I forgot. Maris Leofau is the other guy. So you got 3 guys going, and one that's never played the position before going into the year. So you need another edge, outside linebacker. Then you look at inside linebacker. The only guys that you got on the team that really can play is DeMarvion Overshown. He's it. And he's injury prone. Hasn't been healthy last 2 years. He's not reliable. Then you have guys like Shamar James, who's really a special teamer. You have guys like Justin Barron, who's literally a practice squad level player, as your linebackers going into this year. So linebackers a huge need. We need at least 2 more linebackers on this team, along with another starting edge and edge depth. So you got needs there. Then you go to your cornerback group, and this is where it gets really scary, and safety's even scarier. Your only proven corner going into this year is Deron Bland, who's coming off of another foot surgery. He had a stress fracture just 2 years ago. And as somebody that runs, as somebody that, I haven't had a stress fracture, but I've dealt with lower leg injuries and sore Achilles and knee stuff. And I've ran with people who have had stress fractures. They're nagging injuries, man. And with the type of, position that Deron plays, he's doing a lot of running, stop and go, jumping, things like that. It's not good for stress fractures. It's really bad, actually. And they're nagging injuries that come back. So and it sucks because he's such a good player, but that's where we're at. He's our only proven starter, and he's hurt. Then you got Siobhan Revel, who we don't even know what he is yet, who's coming off of a bad ACL injury from 2 years ago. Hopefully he's finally back to his normal self this year, but he's an unknown. And then Kalen Carson looks serviceable as like a depth player, but the guy's not been healthy. He was hurt last year in 2025 and the year before that, his rookie year, 2024. So we don't have a true corner depth. The healthiest corner that we got that's starting right now is DeQuincy Bridges, who is a practice squad bottom of the roster candidate, and he may get a lot of playing time due to the injuries we have at corner. And people will say, what about Josh Butler? Josh Butler is kind of a bottom of the roster candidate too, and he's coming off of an injury, ACL, from 2024. And he didn't get to play a whole lot. So Cowboys have a lot of depth. They need a lot of depth at corner. Then you go to the safety side of the ball. Donovan Wilson's a free agent. I don't expect the Cowboys to bring him back. He's probably gone. And honestly, he's kind of on, the end of his tail of his career anyways, because he hasn't looked as good the last couple years. Malik Hooker's looked terrible the last 2 years. I do expect the Cowboys to move on from him to save some salary cap space. But then you got to go out there and replace him. So there's that. And I like Marquise Bell. I like Dwanye Thomas, but they don't really fit the 4 or the 3-4. They fit more of the big nickel, like what Dan Quinn likes to run. So I just think the Cowboys pretty much need they need to rebuild the entire secondary for the most part. All their safeties need to be replaced. So they need like 4 safeties. They need at least 2 starting safeties for sure. And they need to get depth there. And then corner, they need a nickel guy, and then they need depth. Then at linebacker, they need at least 1 more inside linebacker. Really 2 would be preferable. And then they got to go out there and get an edge player. So you're talking about 8 to 9, 10 plus players. But everybody's worried about paying George Pickens the big money. As good of a player as he is, he's not so good to where he can cover for multiple positions that I just named that we're in need of this year. It's just you can't do it. And if you're going to pay 70% of your salary cap to the offensive side of the ball, because we're already paying 60%, it's going to be very hard to go out there and build a defense that's good enough to compete. And people are going to blame Christian Parker, but how can you blame Christian Parker? He's got 40% of the salary cap space to work with. He has like barely any salary cap space to work with, and he's never called plays before. He's not being put in a good position by the Dallas Cowboys organization. He's just not. So it's going to be hard for him. The Cowboys are going to have to hit in the draft. Now, if the Cowboys are to bring in, I've heard the rumors about Jalen Thompson. That would make sense. The guy from Arizona was his old secondary coach. I could see the Cowboys going for him. However, I do think he's probably going to be too much money and out of the Cowboys' price range. The Kobe Dean is a name I've heard. Reed Blankenship, I feel like, is a more realistic name that I could see the Cowboys bring over, because I do expect the Cowboys will probably sign some prove-it, bargain basement type deals like they have the last, 4 or 5 years. Or they'll sign solid players that are kind of on the tail end of their career, like Eric Kendricks or, Stephon Gilmore a couple years back, or Anthony Barr, something like that. I do think the Cowboys will do a deal with something like that will help with, like, depth, but they won't be like a true guy that's in his prime. I don't see how they're going to get Max Crosby. That's going to cost way too much money. I'm talking about Pickens is not worth it. So how are you going to pay Pickens and then pay Max Crosby at the same time? It makes no sense. It's delusional talk. So I don't see that. I could see Reed Blankenship. He would be somebody I think the Cowboys could afford. But will he be an upgrade over Donovan Wilson? Maybe a slight upgrade, but not a huge one. Or Malik Hooker. I don't know. Safety position, right? Because it's two different positions. I can't remember if he plays free or strong. I'd have to look that up. But we do need a safety. Then you look at the cornerback position. The Cowboys definitely need a corner, right? And we really don't have. We have one proven corner, and that's it. So there's just too many needs for us to go out there and pay George Pickens and Brandon and all these guys. We just, I don't see how we're going to do it. I just don't. But I've heard Devin Lloyd, and if the Cowboys were to get Devin Lloyd, I'd be pretty excited about it. I mean, I'm a University of Utah alumni. I graduated the fall that Devin Lloyd, was playing there in 21. And I got to watch a lot of him, and he was the guy I really wanted the Cowboys to take back in 2022 in the first round. And I was actually kind of mad that we took Tyler Smith, but I was wrong. Tyler Smith ended up being a stud for us. But I really wanted Devin Lloyd. He was a really good player. So if the Cowboys were to somehow be able to afford Devin Lloyd or Dean, I'd be down with those players. But I don't know how they're going to do it. We'll have to wait and see. You know what I mean? So we'll have to see if they can afford those players. But Devin Lloyd would be a good signing. He would definitely be a good upgrade. He's somebody I think that could play Mike. But guys, I will say before I end this, Cowboys got a lot of needs, but there's a few guys that I like. I like Sonny Styles at Ohio State. I like C.J. Allen out of Georgia. Mansour Delane looks pretty solid. I like Caleb Lomu because offensive tackle is another position the Cowboys honestly need. Really, on the offensive side of the ball, the Cowboys just need another offensive tackle and a backup quarterback. That's pretty much it. And really more of an offensive tackle. So that's really what we need is an OT. So I like Caleb Lomu out of Utah. Heck, if Spencer Fano fell to the Cowboys at number 12, I think you'd be stupid not to take him because he's a dominant offensive tackle. And I watched him play at my alma mater, and that dude is legit. And Lomu is too. And you could move on from Terrence Steele, replace him with Lomu, and you'd save some money. So I wouldn't be upset with that. I do think linebacker, though, is kind of where we should go. I think Sonny Styles, if it's not Spencer Fano, it should be Sonny Styles or Mansour Delane at 12. That's what I think. One of those two guys. If you don't, then if you go C.J. Allen at 20, or if you trade back and Allen happens to still be there at late in the first round, and you get a second round pick, go with C.J. Allen. I like him a lot too. I think Sonny Styles is more of your true Mike, though, over Allen. But that's just me. But I really like both of them. And, yeah, that's where I would go. Names to watch out for, though. Cowboys, C.J. Allen is one of them, and the reason why, we just hired the outside linebackers coach from Georgia. Yes, I know C.J. Allen is an inside linebacker, but the guy was on the staff. He knows C.J. Allen, familiarity. I could see the Cowboys taking him and actually even reaching for him at 12, which I wouldn't be the biggest fan of, but I do like C.J. Allen. But reaching for him at 12 is too much in my eyes. But I could see the Cowboys doing that. And then two other guys, and I don't think anybody on YouTube is going to mention this, but there's a safety that's coming out of SMU named Isaiah. I can't pronounce his last name, but I could see the Cowboys taking him in like the 5th, 6th, or 7th round or middle part of the draft. Reason why I say that, our current inside linebackers coach was the Southern Methodist University defensive coordinator the last 3 years. And I believe he coached secondary. I could be wrong. But he coached this guy. Cowboys are in need of a safety. Don't be surprised if they take a guy named Isaiah, I can't pronounce the last name, out of SMU late in the draft. Watch out for him. Another guy that I could see the Cowboys taking for edge depth, and he's also from SMU, is Cam Robertson. He's another late round pick. Don't be surprised if Dallas takes either Cam Robertson out of SMU or Isaiah, the safety, out of SMU. Because those two guys played at SMU under our current inside linebackers coach. He knows them a lot. And you know the Cowboys, the coaches do the drafting a lot of the time. They choose the players a lot of the time. So do not be surprised if the Cowboys choose one of those two players. Now, the safety from SMU actually had some pretty good production at SMU. So I wouldn't be upset with that, especially if you're going to get him as a backup. But with the Cowboys' safety need, I could see him coming in here and being a starter because of how weak we are at that position right now. And Cam Robertson probably would just be a depth piece. But do not be surprised if Dallas takes those two players. And if they get drafted, you heard it here first on my channel. I said don't be surprised if Dallas takes those players later in the draft. But there's a lot of work to do. We're just going to wait and see. I don't expect much from free agency for the Cowboys. It'll probably be a bargain basement shopping or some prove-it deal like it always is. And, yeah, that's what I think. But let me know what y'all think. I'll catch y'all later. Peace.